We wanted to become communist cadre, completely committed to the revolution.
I was going to do whatever I had to do to be able to be part of it.
The Weathermen took their name from the Bob Dylan lyric, "You don't need a weatherman to know which way the wind blows," by which they meant anyone could see world revolution was imminent. Third World revolutionaries and militant groups in America, like the Black Panthers, would soon overthrow the American government. They argued that SDS had to join this worldwide revolution by organizing white kids to begin fighting.
White youth must choose sides now. We must either fight on the side of the oppressed or be on the side of the oppressor.
The Weather people's ideas about revolution and communism were kindergarten ideas. So it was kind of, we're going to go it alone. There's a revolution in process. Join us. That's it. That's basically what they were saying. Join us or fuck you. It was infuriating and depressing. And I sat in a state of horror watching the Weathermen running away with the student left.
In the summer of 1969, several hundred Weathermen moved into collective houses in cities around the country to put the group's politics into action.
We're building a revolutionary movement that will fight the internal army, which is the police force. Yes, more physical contact if that's necessary. Whatever it takes, we'll do, by any means possible.
The general idea was that working class youth outside the colleges would be more revolutionary than the students at the colleges. Of course, that's who we were. So the summer of 1969 was seen as a time when we would move off campuses, establish ourselves in working class neighborhoods, organizing among working class youth.
And so I went first to Detroit and then was involved in several of the summer programs. But yeah, we built collective houses, and it was this kind of intense moment of trying to transform a group of relatively privileged students into fighters and steel ourselves for what we saw was the coming upheaval.
I left graduate school, left my husband, and joined a weather collective and ended up eating noodles with garlic butter on them every night for a month, and then oatmeal with nothing on it for 3 more months.
Most of us had such little experience with violence and so little relationship to violence, and it led really relatively sheltered lives. And as I said, for my first 7 years of activism, I was philosophically a pacifist. That, to me, there was an aspect of what we did that was psyching ourselves up to make the jump over this hurdle from sort of a more comfortable middle-class life.
We developed all kinds of our own repertoire of psychological tricks, like something called the gut check, where we'd challenge each other to be more violent and to be therefore more revolutionary, or to be more disciplined, to give up our bourgeois luxuries.
Oh, Jesus, sometimes they'd just go all night and they'd pick out someone. It was, to me, it was just too cultish. There would be, people would go on and on about, well, first of all, there was smash monogamy. You know about that. Didn't have monogamous relationships.
It was a moment of extreme sexual experimentation. Group sex, homosexuality, casual sex hookups were all tried as we attempted to break out of the repression of the past into the revolutionary future. As with so much in my life, I needed a theory rationalizing what we were doing. I argued publicly that since sex was the ultimate intimacy in human relations, we were building political collectives bonded with this intimacy among all members, not between monogamous couples. I remember one ride from Chicago to Detroit, in which all 14 or so of us writhed naked on the floor of the van while hurtling down the interstate, legs, arms, genitals, interlocked, with no particular identity attached. A strange, truly disconnected feeling.
Bring the war home was our slogan. Our strategy was that we would make the war visible in the United States, that people couldn't just ignore it, that it would be here.
So-called SDSers came through, broke windows, smashed things, passed out leaflets, stormed through the place.
Violence can mean a lot of different things. We felt that doing nothing in a period of repressive violence is itself a form of violence. That's really the part that I think is the hardest for people to understand. That if you sit in your house and live your white life and go to your white job and allow the country that you live in to murder people and to commit genocide, and you sit there and you don't do anything about it, that's violence.
This conference was initially called to talk about our national...
One of the first things the Weathermen did in the summer of 1969 was to announce that they would hold a huge demonstration called the Days of Rage in Chicago that fall. The Weathermen made it clear that at the demonstration, tens of thousands of protesters would violently confront police.
The Days of Rage was an attempt to break from the norms of kind of acceptable theater of here are the anti-war people, containable, marginal, predictable, and here's the little path they're going to march down, and here's where they can make their little statement. We wanted to say no. What we're going to do is whatever we had to do to stop the violence in Vietnam.
We had done lots of build-up on college campuses in the East and in the Midwest. And we had been told by our, what you might call regional cadre, the leaders of the collectives, that hundreds and thousands of people from their cities would be coming. And we somehow convinced ourselves that this was the case.
Black people are fighting, brown people are fighting, Vietnamese people are fighting. It's now time for young people and working people in this country, for a white movement, a revolutionary movement, to begin to fight.
So that first night, it was a collision with reality. It really was a hard collision with reality because we had expected hundreds, maybe thousands of kids to be here in the park. And I looked and we had maybe 150, maybe 250 kids. We had a small bonfire, and I felt we are really in trouble. How are we going to get out of this? I remember a kind of a secret feeling that I wish somebody would come along and rescue us from what we were about to do.
Last night, they armed themselves with sticks and chains and rocks and surged through the streets of the Gold Coast on Chicago's north side to carry the fight to the enemy, the rich.
So we thundered out of the park about 10 or 12 abreast, and we headed down this way. And the first building we came to was a bank, and we trashed every window in the bank. It was all glass, big plate glass windows, inviting, and that was like the signal. That was like Pavlov's bell.
It seemed to be violence for violence sake, with the radicals making no specific demands.
At about this point, at State and Division, we saw a serious barricade, several police cars, a real masked presence, and we had no out at that point, so we just swarmed into it, and there was a terrible fight right here.
Police generally acted with restraint, but 3 people were wounded by police gunshots.
Last night was a beginning for us. The ruling class in their Gold Coast decadence will walk their streets a little less secure tonight. If they hadn't dug it before, they'd better dig it now. They are the enemy.
The Weatherman SDS has been trying to give the impression that the Black Panthers are on their side, but the Panthers deny this.
We believe that the Weatherman action is anarchistic, opportunistic, individualistic, it's chauvinistic, it's custoristic, and that's the bad part about it. It's custoristic in that its leaders take people into situations where the people can be massacred, and they call that revolution. And it's nothing but child's play, it's folly. We think these people may be sincere, but they're misguided, they're muddleheads, and they're scatterbrains.
Weatherman has totally distorted the concept of militancy. They see it as attacking the people. We're trying to ally with working people, and they're out attacking them. So it's a very simple thing. I mean, police couldn't do a better job. I tend to think that their purpose is just to make the name of SDS a dirty name, and they've managed to do a pretty good job of that.
At that point, after the Days of Rage, there was a sense that we were pretty isolated and pretty marginal. And what we concluded, I think people drew different conclusions from the event. One set of conclusions was that the rest of the country was hopelessly bought off and horrible, and that we were virtually acting alone in concert with the Third World uprisings. So we felt pretty grim and pretty determined at the same time that we were going to see this thing through.
I think there were probably fairly sophisticated people in the government who felt that in some ways the Weathermen were a gift, because from their point of view, the worse the better. That is, the more militant and disruptive the anti-war people, the more support would flow to Nixon as a pillar of strength and sanity against them.
Violence in America today is not caused by the war. It's not caused by repression. There is no romantic ideal involved. Let's recognize these people for what they are. They're not romantic revolutionaries. They're the same thugs and hoodlums that have always plagued the good people.
I joined the FBI in 1969. And frankly, coming from my background, there were very few things, if any, that were more honorable. I was assigned to the Squad 47, more commonly known as the Weatherman Squad. With respect to the Weathermen, we had to decide whether or not these were real serious threats to the internal security of the United States. Were they really going to bomb public buildings and try to throw over the government, or were they just a bunch of talkers? And as they progressed, they earned the respect of the Bureau, respect, I say, in terms of being a potent threat.
The police harassment crescendoed. Our apartments were regularly ransacked, our cars vandalized, our comings and goings monitored and recorded. We began to vary our meeting and sleeping patterns after the pigs broke down the door of a fifth-floor walk-up after midnight, terrorized 3 comrades, and hung Terry upside down by his ankles out the window. It was all bad, of course, but we knew, too, that even here, we were enjoying the privilege of our skin. We were being pursued and beaten, true,